The alarm had not been planned. That was the first thing Professor Cale Veyron told himself when the emergency klaxons screamed through every corridor of the Interstellar Survival Academy's primary training arena. He stood at the central control desk, his four pale fingers hovering over the diagnostic panel, staring at a cascade of red error codes that could not, exist. System failure across all 6 exit quadrants, his assistant droned. Environmental regulators offline. Atmospheric recyclers operating at 31%. Estimated return to nominal function, unknown. Unknown. In 32 years of running survival assessments for cadets across 14 species and 9 star systems, Professor Veyron had never seen that word on his board. He looked through the reinforced observation glass at the arena floor below. 43 cadets had been mid-assessment when the lockdown triggered. 43 beings from across the galactic cooperative Thelosians, Vorkai, Drenethi, Pulsarborn Nomali, the most promising young survivalists in the known galaxy, now sealed inside a 6-kilometer artificial biome with no extraction route and rapidly degrading conditions. 43 cadets. He began pulling up individual biomonitors. By hour 4, the panic was already visible in the data. Inside the arena, the lockdown had transformed from an inconvenience into something else entirely. Cadet Yoro of the Thelosian delegation, top of his class in theoretical survival metrics, had immediately attempted to organize a group shelter near the arena's central supply cache. It was the logical choice. The cache held emergency rations, water filtration tablets, and thermal blankets. Yoro had studied the arena's layout extensively. He reached the cache at hour 1. By hour 3, 9 cadets were clustered around it, arguing about rationing protocols. By hour 4, 2 of them had begun hoarding. By hour 6, the thermal blankets had been divided unevenly, and 3 cadets from cooler climate species were already showing signs of mild temperature stress as the arena's climate systems began fluctuating. Cadet Dravan of the Vorkai, a species whose homeworld had a survival rate in uncontrolled wilderness environments of approximately 94%, sat cross-legged against a synthetic rock formation and began carefully, methodically, conserving his energy. His people were built for patience. He would wait it out. Surely the professors would restore power within hours. Surely. The Umali pair, designated Cadet Siv and Cadet Ara, attempted to interface their neural link communicators with the arena's dead network. They were among the most technologically sophisticated beings in the galaxy. Their fingers moved in precise, practiced patterns across their wrist panels. For 8 hours, they tried. For 8 hours, they failed. Without external infrastructure, their brilliance had no socket to plug into. They sat in silence after that, deeply unsettled in a way their kind rarely experienced. By hour 12, Professor Veyron had managed to restore partial communications, audio only, no extraction, and he began monitoring individual cadet check-ins. 39 cadets checked in. He scanned the roster. 4 missing. 3 were quickly located, 2 sheltering in a rocky overhang, 1 with a minor injury near the eastern biome section, all stable. The 4th was Cadet Mara Ellison. Human. Deathworld origin, specifically, a settlement on the outer edge of the Karen Shelf on Earth's second moon, a place colonists had nicknamed the Scar for reasons that required no elaboration. 19 years old. Average academic scores. Mid-tier physical assessments. Nothing in her file that screamed exceptional. Professor Veyron pulled up her biomonitor. Heart rate, 62 beats per minute. Calm. Her locator placed her in the arena's northwest quadrant, the designated hazard zone, an area of artificial terrain that the Academy used only for advanced wilderness modules. No food cache. No shelter structures. Just raw, difficult simulated terrain that most cadets had been actively avoiding. He stared at her monitor for a long moment. Then he switched it to active observation and began to watch. Mara Ellison had not panicked at hour 4. She hadn't panicked at hour 1 either. When the alarms first sounded, while other cadets ran toward the cache and the exits and each other, Mara had stood very still for exactly 11 seconds, looked at the ceiling, listened to the quality of the air recyclers cycling down, watched the lighting flicker toward its emergency spectrum, and then she had walked, not run, northwest. She had grown up in the scar. On the scar, panic was a luxury you couldn't afford and a mistake you usually only made once. Her first task had been water. Not food, water. She'd found a condensation pattern on the underside of the arena's rock formation overhangs within the first hour, a quirk of the failing climate system creating temperature differential. She set up a collection system using her standard issue field kit's tarp panel and a drinking tube routed into her canteen. Slow. Reliable. Continuous. Her second task had been heat assessment. The arena temperature was dropping unevenly, colder near the floors, a thermal layer roughly chest height. She built low. Dug slightly, using a flat rock as a scraper. The earth in the arena was synthetic loam, but it behaved like real soil. An insulated depression, lined with dry organic debris from the biome's simulated forest floor, covered with her tarp panel angled to reflect her body heat downward. Not comfortable. Not supposed to be. By hour 10, she had eaten twice as small, deliberate portions from her personal kit's emergency rations, which she had, as a matter of personal habit developed on the scar, always kept 2 days beyond standard issue quantity. She had also identified 3 additional water collection points, mapped her immediate area for threats and resources, located a section of the arena's synthetic forest where the bioluminescent moss was still growing, meaning the microclimate there was more stable than average, and begun sleeping in 4-hour rotational cycles. 4 hours on. 4 hours off. She did not wait to be rescued. She simply lived. By hour 24, Professor Veyron had a crisis on his hands. 6 cadets were showing significant physiological stress indicators. The cluster near the central cache had consumed 30% of the communal rations in the first 12 hours due to poor coordination. The temperature differential in the main arena body had produced cold stress symptoms in 3 non-human cadets whose biology hadn't been designed for variance. Cadet Dervon, patient and disciplined, was beginning to show mild dehydration. He had assumed the arena's water systems would come back online before he needed to improvise. They had not. Yoro's group had fractured. 4 had left to find independent shelter. 2 had stayed and were conserving what remained of the cache supplies with grim, belated discipline. The Umali pair had, after hour 16, stopped attempting to hack the arena systems and instead begun very carefully observing the arena environment, what worked, what didn't, what was still functioning. They were learning. Adapting. Civ had found a condensation point near the east wall by hour 20. Ara had constructed a basic windbreak using supply container panels. They were doing better. But Mara Ellison's biomonitor remained steady. Heart rate between 58 and 68. Temperature stable. Hydration adequate. She had, by Professor Veyron's observation records, slept a combined total of 16 hours in the first 24. She had eaten small, regular portions. She had not wasted energy on worry. She had simply survived, with the quiet, almost bored competence of someone for whom survival was not an extraordinary act. It was just Tuesday. Hour 48. The engineers finally cracked the cascade failure, a rare interaction between 3 independent system errors that had required a complete manual override of the arena's master control network. Professor Veyron personally authorized the extraction sequence. Cadets emerged in various states of condition, but all alive, all functional, a genuine testament to the basic quality of the Academy's training, even imperfectly applied under stress. Mara Ellison walked out of the northwest exit at hour 48 and 6 minutes, the last cadet to leave, not because she was struggling, but because when the all-clear signal came, she had been sleeping, and had calmly completed her sleep cycle before packing her kit, erasing all traces of her shelter, and walking to the exit at a steady, unhurried pace. She looked, frankly, fine. Her uniform was dirty. Her hair was loose. She had a scratch on her forearm from the synthetic scrubland. She looked like someone who had gone camping and found it mildly interesting. Professor Veyron met her at the exit. He was a being of considerable professional restraint. He had decades of experience. He did not, as a rule, allow himself to show surprise. He looked at her for a moment. "Cadet Ellison," he said. "Your physiological indicators were the most stable of any participant across the full 48 hours. Your resource management was," he paused, choosing the word carefully, "exceptional. Would you care to explain your methodology?" Mara considered the question with the air of someone being asked to explain how they remembered to breathe. "I grew up on the scar," she said. "We don't really get a choice about knowing this stuff." Professor Veyron was quiet for a moment. "No," he said finally, with something in his voice that in a human might have been called respect, quiet, genuine, and slightly unsettled at the edges. "I suppose you don't." He made a note in her file. Not exceptional academic scores. Not elite physical metrics. Just a single line, added to the bottom of her profile in the Academy's records, in Professor Cale Veyron's careful script. "Do not underestimate what a Deathworld teaches its children about staying alive." He closed the file. Behind him, somewhere in the medical wing, a Thelosian cadet who had ranked first in theoretical survival metrics was being treated for mild dehydration and stress fatigue. Mara Ellison was already asking where the cafeteria was. Because humans don't survive because they're the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. They survive because on the worlds that made them, survival was never optional, and they never forgot it.